it. I can't believe they change everything. Okay, let's do the 4 limitless contemplation. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen damje dewa tang dewe ju tang den pa ju chik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa ju chik, dungal mepe dewa tampa tang mindrawa ju chik, nering chak tang nitang drawe tang lom chempo la ne pa ju chik. So good evening, everybody. And it's lovely to see all of you. Switch your cameras on if you can. You can see that Natalie's in her bed. I love him. And she's very happy to be there. It's fun. I'm very happy, especially when it comes to winter. But tonight we're going to do comparing the third afterlife of the Bardo becoming with life in Samsara. Hello, Rowan. Part 3. And I really want us to take this. I want us to take this and really, really, really understand it. And then next week, I told them, I don't know if everybody was here, that Lamayeshi is going to come into the group next week. And then I'm going to ask him a lot about his dark retreats, because he really has done amazing work in his dark retreats. So he knows the Bardos like the back of his hand. So I'm going to get him to really tell you all a lot about that, which will be very, very interesting next week. So tonight I'm going to start with a story, another one of Rachel Raymond's story, because she's got so many that are so valid for us in this time and age that I like to use her stories. But she says, I was just beginning my private practice as a counselor to people with cancer when a patient of mine died. He was young, a 40-year-old engineer with cancer of the pancreas. He was referred to me by his oncologist, who said, look, I've run out of treatment. I'm willing to talk to him, but I really have nothing more to offer him, which often happens right near the end with these doctors. And they should be trained, to be able to go much further with their patients in the physical treatment. Knowing this doctor to be a kind man, I realized he simply did not know he had anything other than his expertise that might be of value to the patient. So I said I would be willing to talk to this man for whom there was no further treatment. Shortly afterwards, we started our sessions. Richard, sorry, his name was Richard, so I didn't know if I should change it if you were here. But anyway, you're not on camera tonight. So shortly afterwards, we started our sessions. Richard was a reserved man, very tall and gaunt. He was always carefully and impeccably dressed. The clothing he wore was made to fit the much larger man that he once was. I was struck, as I often am when people are this sick, by the iron will that kept him going. He had refused my offer to visit him at his home, insisting he would come to my office. Later, his family told me that it took him more than 2 hours to dress himself. Refusing their help, he would put on one shoe, then rest, then struggle with the other. We did 4 or 5 sessions together in all. We talked about many things, his symptoms, his bitterness over what had befallen him. He was a young man. About his feelings of isolation from the people around him, about opening communications with his family. Once or twice his family came and we all talked, and it helped. One day, as he came in, he asked me if I would write him a prescription. Are you in pain? I asked, my heart sinking. Had his complex regime of pain control lost its effectiveness? It was all we had. He shook his head. No, he said, I'm just anxious all the time. I haven't been able to sleep for 2 nights. I just lie there. Can you give me something? I said that I could and asked him if he had any idea what was causing through this. You've been through so much. You've been through so much. Sorry, let me just get. I told him, why now? He had no idea. Had he been having dreams? Just the one he told me. In it, a ravenous beast was pursuing him. He'd not been able to see it, but had simply known that it was there. He had awakened sweating, but he couldn't remember anything more. I waited for him to continue, but he'd not made a connection between the dream and what he was feeling. Perhaps we should revisit the dream, I suggested. It may help us to understand. He nodded his agreement. I suggest he close his eyes, take a few deep breaths, and let me know when he was ready to begin. When he signaled his readiness, I asked him to imagine himself back in his dream. This proved surprisingly easy for him. In his imagination, he started to run. In the next 10 or 15 minutes, I did everything I knew to help bring him into another relationship with the beast that was pursuing him, to free him of being its prey. Nothing worked. Become invisible, I suggested. It can see me. Hide behind something. It knows where I am. Talk to it. It won't answer me. As it gained on him, his anxiety grew. As it became clear that he would not be able to evade the beast, I began to ask him questions about it. He still could not see it and continued to run. But gradually, his answers helped me to know a great deal more about it. He told me that this beast was irresistible and merciless. There was no negotiating with it. It was inevitable. But it was not evil. He was very clear about that. In fact, he said it seemed to him to be natural. After some time, I said to him, you know, Richard, you've tried absolutely everything. Maybe the only thing left for you to do is to allow it to eat you. I'd expected him to object, to talk about the things he was attached to, the people he would leave behind, but he immediately moved in this direction and imagined himself overtaken. For a while, things became intense. Richard sat with his eyes closed, weeping, sweating, and shaking so forcefully that I could hear his chair rocking. He seemed far too frail for this at this point, and I began to doubt the wisdom of what I had done. But slowly the shaking stopped, and he grew very calm. Gradually the room became deeply still, and in the stillness I had the impression of sunlight. But I knew it was almost 5 o'clock. Richard seemed completely relaxed and at peace, and so was I. We sat there together for a while, and then he said softly, there is light. There is only light. I am light. We sat for a while longer, then he opened his eyes and said, hey, I don't feel anxious at all. That was great, doctor. The session was over and he left. I'd forgotten to give him a prescription for tranquilizers, and he had not remembered either or reminded me. I was still new to this sort of counseling, and for the next 3 or 4 days, I kept thinking about this session. She did so much amazing counseling with death and dying. Intellectually, I suspected that Richard's anxiety had become something to do with what Freud calls the fear of non-being. But Richard's dream experience seemed different, similar to some other things I'd recently read about near-death experiences, things that weren't yet in the medical literature. Finally, I called Richard at home and told him I'd been thinking about him. How are you doing? In a conversational and pleasant voice, he told me that he was doing much worse. He started to describe his new symptoms, yet he seemed calm about these very major physical changes. I pointed this out to him. Yes, he said, I feel different. That was a very helpful session. How are you spending your time? I asked. Just thinking about things. What sort of things? He laughed. Crazy ideas. Tell me one. And he told me that the day before he had been lying in bed thinking about getting up, and suddenly out of the corner of his eye, he had become aware of some sort of barrier or a wall just behind him. As he noticed it, he realized he had always known it was there, but had never seen it before. I encouraged him to say more. Well, I know I'm here on this side of it, but at the same time, I know I'm on the other side of it too. I don't know what that means. Do you? She said, no. I would have said, yes, I do, if he'd asked me about it. Okay. Well, I think about it a lot and it makes me feel good. It gives me that same feeling I had in your office, sort of peaceful and joyful. That's a good feeling to have, I told him. Yes, he said. There was a silence, and very softly he started to laugh and hung up the phone. 2 or 3 days later, I heard that he had died. I like to think he died a little differently than he might have. I like to think that, but I don't know. I could still hear his laugh. Now, it's a very beautiful story, that, because I've done a lot of death and dying work as well with people. And I think that we have to come to terms with our dark perception of death, which he did in the session. A lot of people, I hope none of you, but a lot of people really, really fear death, okay? And fear that change that we've been talking about for the last 2 sessions, that real change that we have and that change that we're going to go through. And so when people are really like he was as a young man, going to die, he really had these fears, and that barrier was what we put up. It's kind of our attachment to things. So he's saying, I'm here, but I'm also on the other side of the wall. And what he's actually saying is, how do I leave all this and actually climb over the wall and go on my journey? And I think that's a real dilemma for all of us when we're dying. Maybe not for a lot of people who are really aware, but I think it is. But the Bardo teachings are so immensely and amazingly useful when we actually face death. And I think that the barrier is both sides. Something really drastic is going to change after this. And if only, like in the Bardo teachings, I mean, in Tibet, they had such a Buddhist community. And so whenever anybody was dying, the lamas came along and they helped them form the transference of the consciousness through their head. They knew where they were going. They knew the whole journey. Not only that, but the lamas would recite the journey for them while they were going on their way. And we often, in the beginning, when we started doing these Bardo teaching, when someone died, we would play the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which actually gives you a map of exactly where you're going right along. And I think that to have this available, it's such an amazing opportunity, okay? And you need to ask these questions about when we're saying now that we're comparing the Bardo of this life, which is one Bardo, which is an interval between 2 points, and the third afterlife Bardo. But what I want to do is because I've compared the two, it's because both of them have karmic possibilities. But karma is a relative but important subject and very, very complex than simply cause and effect. That's not what karma is. Karma is a very, very complex subject. Every single relative end result, okay, and it's relative because it's all illusory anyway, is a complex, interwoven set of circumstances. Even Taisitu says, if you take one peacock's feather, it's got 1,000,000 causes and conditions that bring it to be a peacock feather. So it's really important that we understand that that relative subject is very, very complex. And these are just possibilities. It's up to us. But in this life, this Bardo between birth and death, which is only one Bardo, we are mostly using our human consciousness. Most people are not using their nature of mind. They're just using their human consciousness and not their nature of mind. And the human consciousness, as I've told you, has got 8 levels of consciousness, okay? And with that human consciousness, I want you all to understand that we can delude ourselves. We can make up stories to make us look better, or we can blame others for our misfortunes, or we can hide from ourselves, or we can pretend about things we're too scared or upset to look at. Don't you often get a feeling when people are not genuine? I mean, when you're talking to someone who's pretending, takes me about half a minute and I can mostly see that they're pretending. And the thing is that it's because we hide so much from ourselves in that human consciousness, okay? And I see so many who've refused to look at things truthfully because it's too painful. It's too painful for people. So karma is relative. I'll give you a chance to ask in a few moments. We have an essence, a primordial consciousness, which is ultimate and totally unaffected by karmic possibilities, stains, horrible emotions, totally unaffected by it. So the point is, instead of grabbing over there onto all the people that are crying for you and losing you, instead of attaching there, you should actually grab onto the consciousness, the real true nature, which can then take you into total liberation. And then people always say to me, but what about my family and what about all the people I love? Am I going to lose all those people? Well, you know what? You lose the people, the physical structure. But what they leave you is inside you. So you have all of that. So what we're talking about here is not to be attached when you die. That's one of the most important things, to not be attached, because in the human body, we can try and hide from our karma, our physical body, to an extent. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes it just hits us in the face and we can't actually hide from it. But in a mental body, which is formed in the third afterlife, okay, we can't hide. It's just like a movie playing before our eyes, whether we like it or not. It is a movie, and that's all it is. So, when I look at someone like the story we've just read about Richard, it's such an important thing, because imagine if that same guy was sitting with someone who really knew the Dharma and really knew the map of the afterlife. How comforting would that be to a young guy who knows he's going to die very soon and who's really scared and who's been pursuing by a beast? What is that beast? That beast is his fear, nothing more. So as soon as he lets the beast eat him, or as soon as we look at the fear closely, the fear dissolves straight away. It's really important. So if you look at how brilliant Padmasambhava's teachings on the 6 Bardos are, we can learn everything from them and abide by them. So let me give you tonight, very briefly, my own simple interpretation of that map into the afterlife. Okay, just a very simple one, not the detail. You can go back to my teachings and my YouTubes to get the details, but I want to give you just my own interpretation of these teachings, how Padmasambhava has so brilliantly given them to beings so that they can have natural liberation. So we start with the question, why are we born? Why are we born into a human body? We are born to enter the schoolroom, yet again, to study, not earthly things. Earthly things we can study. We can study them and really make great impacts in our communities with the studies that we do. I'm not desecrating those in any way. But those studies, once you get rid of the physical body and the environment you're living in, they're of no value to you. The only value is if you did do a profession or something brilliant that really helped the planet and helped people and served them, that you take with you. But the intellectual knowledge, no, it dies with you when you are at death. So when people are busy intellectualizing about tons and tons and tons of knowledge and everything, and they won't look at anything else, they really are quite lost, because at the moment of death, that goes away from you. You haven't got that intellect anymore. You've got your true nature. So we need to study. We need to study spiritually, to deeply learn spiritually, to ponder. Now, ponder, another word for ponder, I use ponder a lot, is contemplation. And those of you that have got more time must spend a lot of your time pondering. If you take any of these teachings, you ponder them for a long time. Pondering and contemplation doesn't mean thinking about them. It means when you ponder, you drop a stone into the pond and it ripples out. So you allow the digestion of what you've read, you allow it to ripple out in an amazing way, not in an intellectual way, so that your cognizance becomes aware of what you are pondering. And of course, we're here to self-liberate, not to liberate the self, to self-liberate. That means it liberates by itself. So interesting. If you're not interfering, analyzing, picking it up, working it out, all of that, if you just see it, become aware of it, it self-liberates of its own, including your negative emotion. But we don't do this. We get here in a body, get trapped, and forget what we came to do. In this life, we can get so involved, so attached to everything, we totally forget. And then, of course, it can't be perfect because we won't learn. So Padmasambhava teaches there are two other bardos within the bardo between birth and death. So there are actually three bardos from the time we are born until the time we die. So the first one is being birthed, which I've just talked about for a moment. The second one is called, and each of these other two bardos give us amazing opportunities, open portal to unity with our true nature, for opening up to the primordial consciousness. So the first bardo, which is within this, is the bardo of dreaming. Okay? So when you lie, like Natalie's lying in her bed now, I don't know how you stay awake. If I lay like that, I would just go fast to sleep in a minute. Okay? But when you look at your dream state, everything, because you spend a third of your life sleeping. So during that time, you have your beautiful dreams. And if we train, especially in Tibetan dream yoga, we can have amazing access to our primordial consciousness in clear light dreams, or amazing access to the dreams of clarity, which are your spiritual things. Now, I know one of the dreams I do a lot of, not so much anymore, but in my earlier days, was helping people who've died. So those dreams of clarity are really important. They give you real spiritual knowledge, okay? And also your samsaric dreams, which are the dreams you have like about your day, what happened in your day. But if you look at them very, very deeply, they help us to clear, as a lot of you that have done dream work with me, the garbage, so that our spiritual path can open up. So they help us to clear that out. So the bardo of dreaming, which we have in our sleep state, is one of the bardos within the bardo of birth and death. This third bardo within the bardo of birth and death is called, Padmasambhava calls it, the bardo of meditation. So if you count all the hours that a lot of people spend in meditation, that is a bardo in itself. And of course, in meditation, number one, we can really tame our wild human consciousness, or we can go beyond and get to the primordial consciousness, the primordial purity, or consciousness that is at a level. So the two other bardos, the bardo of dreams, and this is just a very brief summary, the bardo of dreams and the bardo of meditation, in both of them, the aims are exactly the same. In fact, the aim is exactly the same in all 6 bardos. It's to free yourself and to liberate yourself. I'm going to give you time, a few moments to consider. I'm just going to go through the bardos, and then we'll come out at the last bardo. I'll give you time for questioning, and then we'll go into the last bardo. So most importantly, in these 3 birth to death bardos, okay, that I've just told you about, we can learn about and access our Vajra body, speech, and mind. Because at the moment, we live in an ordinary body, ordinary speech, and ordinary mind. So when we access that, the subtle body, the Vajra body, the body that contains all the wisdom, we could also call it the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. All those 3 are very, very, very important, because the Dharmakaya is our essence, the Sambhogakaya is the pure, luminous expression of the essence, and the Nirmanakaya is what these great beings emanate in a Nirmanakaya to help all of us, so we can see them, because in the Sambhogakaya we can't see them. But those 3 bodies are within us. They're what we're living. We just don't get them. We use ordinary body, speech, and mind. Within us, we have the total possibility of freedom from karma and suffering, totally. And most humans don't get this because they've got too much business in samsara. They're too busy in samsara. But it's always there if we wish it. And that's the purpose of our being. The essence, your Dharmakaya, it's pure expression and it's manifestation into all kinds of realms. And when we begin to understand that, we really have an amazing, amazing thing. What is beautiful about these Bardo teachings, and listen carefully to this, if you don't get it in one of the Bardos, you get another chance in another Bardo. If you don't get it in that Bardo, you get another chance in another Bardo. If you don't get it in that Bardo, you get your final chance in the 3rd Bardo that we're talking about, okay? You always get another chance if you should just wake up and say, I really want to understand this. I haven't succeeded in doing it. I really want to understand it. So let's go to Bardo number 4 very briefly, called the Bardo of dying. That's what the story was all about Richard in the Bardo going on to the Bardo of dying. What happens when you die is all the elements dissolve, and with it, all the levels of your human consciousness. You've got the 8 levels, 7 of them dissolve, and you're left with 1 level, your alaya or your substrate consciousness, in which all your imprints are. You're left with that. That goes with you on the journey of life. Nothing else. Your intellect, your mind, all your sense consciousnesses, your mind doing things, your likes, your dislikes, it's dead at death. Okay, all of it dies except what you've done with your karmic imprints, whether they are positive or negative. Okay. And just to tell all of you so you can understand the last Bardo, that in the Bardo of dying, first all the outer elements dissolve. Earth, water, fire, air, and dissolve into space. Then the inner elements dissolve. Now this is a fascinating process, because when you come into a body, it doesn't matter if you don't remember a lot of this. You can go back to many talks I've given on all of these, but just to give you an idea so that when we do the 3rd Bardo, you can really understand well. But the inner elements, when you go into a body, you know that you've got to have the father and the mother. You've got to have the 2 bindus in order to come together so that a baby can be formed. Now, those 2 bindus, when you go into a body, the one from the father comes up on the head, and the other from the mother goes just below the navel. Now, when you die, what happens is the bindu, the white bindu from the father, starts dissolving after the other outer elements. These are the inner elements. And the bindu from the mother, red from below the navel, comes up, dissolving. Now, what is fascinating is they meet in the middle. And then at that moment, that's the physical body has died, but the inner elements, that's why you should never touch a body straight after death. You should leave that body so the inner elements can at least dissolve, okay? And it's a great pity when people say, right, flat-lined, move the body, when the inner elements are trying to dissolve, especially with someone that really wants to be able to leave the body in an enlightened state. But what happens with those three, when the two come together, there's a moment of dark and then into the light. And if we are aware, and if we were enlightened, we can do the transference right there from the heart out of the Brahma aperture at the back of your head and into the pure light. It's like the child joining the mother. But what is fascinating, when those inner elements dissolve, so do all the negative emotions. Now, isn't that an interesting fact? Because think about this. When the inner element comes from the father, all the aggression dissolves. When the bindu coming up from the mother comes up, all the passion, the desires, and everything dissolves. Because if you look at your negative emotions, they're made up of passion, aggression, emotion, okay? So the passions all dissolve. And when they come together, all the ignorance or delusion dissolves. Now, what I want to say to all of you is, isn't that fascinating? That when you first die in the bardo of dying, all the instincts and the negative emotions are removed for a certain period of time. It's like the universe is saying, hey, sweetie, wake up. You haven't got all those emotions. They're going to come back very soon. In the third bardo, they're back, okay? But there are none of them there. That's why, right after death is okay in a certain way, because you haven't got any of the negative emotions. They're all gone. And so that is the time, but most of us can't see that light because we're so attached to the bardo of life and often resisting death. I watched my mother die, and it's so interesting because I was trying to tell my mother, you must go to the light. And you know what my mother was doing? When my husband came into the room, she grabbed hold of his hands. She was actually asking him to keep her. I was going, go, Ma, go. You've got to go to the light. And she was going, help me, help me, help me, to my husband, because she didn't want to go. So interesting. Even though she knew I had trained her quite a lot, but at the moment of death, people just want what is familiar. They don't want to leave what is really familiar. So I want all of you to understand you have that. And then if you faint, a lot of people faint or go into like an unconscious state because they're scared. And the next bardo, which is the most exquisite bardo, and if you want the details of that bardo, I'm teaching them on the Monday morning about the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities. A couple of you are there. Just go back and watch those videos, because you'll see the bardo of Dharmata, or the bardo of reality, is that pure expression. So it's the 5 wisdom Buddhas, which the 5 wisdom Buddhas become manifest. But because they are so vivid, they are so clear, they are rays, lights, and sound, very loud, people get very scared. And Padmasambhava says, please recognize, know. Think of that word recognize. Know. Know. Recognize. Know who you are. If you recognize anything that is coming in front of your eyes in the Bardo of Dharmata, you are liberated at that second very high level. But most people are too scared. So they just absolutely faint. They fainted from the time they've died. They haven't taken the opportunities. And then they come, I'm coming now, Mart. I'm going to just go up to this, and then I'm opening it. Okay, right now. So we become unconscious. How many times in our life have we refused to face things, okay, and not used to our primordial conscious to understand what is happening? Then whatever we're going through life is an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to clear karmic imprints. So we become unconscious. We felt in life cheated, victimized, when it was all our own creation. So if we do become lapse into unconsciousness, then we wake up in this third Bardo that I'm teaching you. And the third Bardo feels familiar to us. Now, for me, the Bardo of Dharmata is extremely familiar. To a lot of people, when they saw those vivid colors, those sounds, those rays, they'd go, ah, they'd be so fearful they'd just faint. So if you're not aware, a lot of you are aware, then you just wake up in what looks like a familiar environment. And that's where the mental body starts forming. So I've given you a little summary about the whole thing. Please, Mart, go ahead. Because a lot of you might want to ask things, and then we're going to do this last Bardo. Yes.
So I die, the outer elements dissolve, and when that has happened,
Yes.
we obviously, I think, because of lack of, I don't know, other descriptions, then you'd say, well, and then you are coming to the second part of the Bardo of Dharmata.
Right.
Who is this you?
Good question.
So I mean, we said all the consciousnesses go, and the eighth consciousness, obviously being the store consciousness and alaya and all that. But so who? Yeah, my question is, who is that you that goes into the second bardo, and then the you goes into the third bardo, and what is that? Who
You
or
know,
what is that you?
yeah, and it's such a good question because the reason we have failed, just mute yourself when I'm talking and then you can unmute again. The reason we have failed, with that you or I, it's better to say I, okay? The reason is because we really believe that is real, okay? And by the time we get to the Bardo of becoming, that's why Dzogchen Ponlop, that master says, he says in the third Bardo, to be or not to be. Who do you want to be? Now, I keep telling people in all the groups, I keep saying, Melanie is no thing. Martin is no thing, okay? We're just a conglomeration. We're a conglomeration of aggregates and elements, aggregates of form, feelings, perceptions, habits, and consciousness, okay? We just that. We just elements and everything. We just made up and compiled of all of that. But there's no reality in that. So what is actually going on? It really is your own primordial consciousness, which belongs to the essence of everything, okay? Not this little individual, but the primordial consciousness does get near Manakayas, which are perfect individuals, but those individuals, that we're talking about, I, me, you, but those individuals are not permanent in any way. So, for example, if one of you were to go down the street and meet Padmasambhava, and maybe you wouldn't even recognize him, okay, he might be standing in front of you, he's able, from his primordial consciousness, to just manifest forms for the different people and what they need. And that's where I want to go. I want to be able to manifest form. Yeshi Tsogil wrote in her autobiography, she wrote, or not in her autobiography, in one of the stories she tells, she says, she once walked along with some being or another, and she said, that's the furthest I ever go. I just sit in primordial consciousness and emanate whatever I need. She doesn't move. She doesn't need exercise. She's not an I. She's just primordial consciousness that is able to emanate to help all the people that are on earth that think they are something. So actually, there isn't any you. And the point of the matter is that when you go into the bardos, from the moment you go into birth, you have to lose the you. Okay. So even if I look in the mirror and I go, oh, Melanie, you're getting old and you're so tired and things like that, and I look at myself and I say that, but then I go, but who's old? And who's Melanie? And who are you? You're just one little grain of sand that happened to come into this embodiment, and you believe you're something. You believe, you are something going somewhere. But ultimately, we're not going anywhere. But relatively, we need to have something that we can, what can I say, believe in. I have this beautiful story, just short. Many years ago, an American tourist paid a visit to a renowned Polish sage. Polish, Iga, okay, a Polish sage in this story. He was amazed to see that the sage's home was completely empty. Simple dwelling, furnished with a few books and a single table and a bench. Master, asked the tourist, where is your furniture? Well, where is yours? The master responded. Mine, asked the puzzled American, but I'm only passing through. So am I, said the sage with a smile. Okay. And that's knowing you're passing through. There's no permanent stop for any of you. So best when you're going to die, you give up grasping at everything. People say, but my children, I remember a young woman who was dying many years ago, and I was helping her die. And she had these two little children, and she was very devastated to leave the children, but she understood a lot, and she'd been with me for quite some time. And and I had a session with her and the children very close to her death. And I remember her children, Roan, you might remember her. Do you remember the girl who had breast cancer? She was amazing. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I'm not going to give you all the details, but the children said things like, I remember clearly, Mom, will you be able to see us from the other dimensions? Will you be able to see us when you're gone? Will you be able to guide us? Now, what do you tell like a 5, 6-year-old or 7-year-old little child? No, I'm going on my journey. You're not going to say that to a child, but you should say it to the adults around you. No, I'm going on my journey. But what I said to the children was, I said, you know what? Even if you can't see, because the one asked, will you be at all, when I get married one day, will you be at the wedding? Will you be at all these kind of things? And how I explained it then, I'd probably explain it much better now, was that I said, do you want to know a big secret? So they said, yes. I said, do you know that your mommy is inside you? And you are inside your mommy. So when mommy goes on her journey, she's got you right in her heart. And wherever she is, when you want to see her, you can just look inside your heart and there she will be. You will be able to see her. Now, I even say that to big people, never mind little children. Little children can understand that. You see, we aren't anything that is permanent. We're just causes and conditions all put together. We've only come so that we can drop that, so that we can go to our primordial consciousness. When Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, they left the Pure Lands. It wasn't the story that God said, go away, you've sinned, you've eaten apple. It was that they started to have an I. And the I, believing in it, took them away from the Pure Lands. When I learned this, that story was so clear in my mind because something didn't gel with me when I heard the story, even as a little girl, of Adam and Eve. They were, first of all, Eve was made out of Adam's rib or whatever it was, or the vice versa, I don't know. And then they had everything they wanted. What was that? What was that Garden of Eden? That Garden of Eden was a pure land, what we're supposed to have when we haven't got an I anymore. And they decided they wanted an I, so they left, their minds left the consciousness of having all that they needed. Now, I'm not supposed to go into this now because I've got other things I want to tell you. Any other questions or comments? Anybody want us? Please, Mel.
Mel, so you were saying to Martin, okay, so it's the primordial consciousness that's traveling in the bodies. So hold on a sec. The only consciousness that goes with you is the liar.
Yes.
So does that become what's coming with you? The primordial, the liar, or does it become the primordial?
It's simply, you can't even say the Alaya consciousness or something. It's simply what you have used your life for. So what you understand is nothing goes with you. Not a piece of furniture, not a wedding ring, not a doggy that you love, nothing goes with you. The only thing that goes with you is what you have made of your life. So when you hurt somebody or do something negative, like I'm watching these stories of all these Iranian leaders leaving, and I know their idea is very different to my idea of what will happen to them after death, because after death you have to see your mind in plain sailing. Those are your deeds, your karmic deeds. And your karmic deeds go with you because on a relative level, you have to pay for them. But on an ultimate level, you don't need to pay for anything because there isn't anything to pay for. So it's a very interesting thing, Mimi. You know, when you say, is it your Alaya consciousness? Yes, it is your Alaya consciousness, but what's your Alaya consciousness? It's simply what you've done with your life. So every time you find a person, an animal, a thing that you've been loving and caring and touching, that makes an imprint. That goes with you. Not the thing you've helped, but the deed, what you've done, goes with you into the Bardos. Such a fascinating thing when you look at it. Does that help you, Mim? Okay, anybody else want to ask, and don't be scared of your questions, because it's really, you can ask any question, because I like with these Bardo teachings, see, in the beginning, I know when I was working at the center, and some of you were around, we had this Bardo group, and I wrote a Bardo manual and everything, and I followed the teachings like this and everything. Then people would ask me all these weirdo questions, if they were Christian, if they were Jewish, if they were this, and I had to adapt. And as I was adapting all the answers I gave, I was kind of being very creative with these teachings. You've got to relate to them with your heart, not like this. You've got to relate to them. You've got to see, what is it? What is this process through the Bardo? So when you leave the Bardo, first you have the opportunity to discover your own essence, the Dharmakaya, in the first Bardo of dying. In the second Bardo of dying, you have the opportunity to see your Sambhogakaya, which is the pure expression of your essence. In the third Bardo, you've missed it. So now when you come to the third Bardo, the Bardo of becoming, what do you want to become? Because I know that I don't want to become a thing or a person. I just want to be able to blend with the wisdom of I like the lotus wisdom. That's what I relate to. So I want to become one with the lotus wisdom so that I can enlighten people. That's my aim, not for any birth or anything that I really want to have afterwards. I don't want to have just a little birth to parents, unless that won't be very beneficial to a lot of people. But I'm not interested in that anymore. You leave behind that individuality, and then you want to look at people. You want to touch the core of people, and you want to relate to these teachings very creatively. Any other questions or comments or anything that you're feeling? Please, Liam.
Hello, Mel. I've got my Rob Net t-shirt on. Can you see it?
Okay, what was that? Paul.
Concentrate.
Paul, concentrate. Oh, God, that's so funny. And are you?
Yeah, very hard, every day, like working. Got to figure this out. No,
Yeah.
I'm joking. Yeah, just a bit of a lighter note.
Good.
I mean, there's always so many gems that gets dropped through the sessions, but it all ties in with the topic, and the contemplation, that you touched on is I thought about it, when you spoke about it tonight. That's probably the first thing that really changed my Dharma practice and made it more real, because say before I was doing mindfulness and Chenrezi, and you get I got some feelings of well-being, or maybe whatever people say with mindfulness, maybe a bit more focus or awareness, all of that. Chenrezi, you have a feeling of goodness, but the contemplation and the things about that is, and it was just before you said that, maybe I've heard it before, but like dropping the stone into the water, like I was about to say that and then you said it, but the thing is also, it's like, it's which, it's being guided by a master or by the tradition or the lineage for the specific stone that you're dropping into the water. So the water is like your consciousness, right? You're sitting there in awareness and you're dropping this thing in there, this thought, okay? But that thought is, if it will either bring you to a place of total faith, which will increase your devotion, or it will not, So if you drop that thing in there, for myself, and I contemplate it, I look at it from this angle, and I look at it from that angle, and I go through all the kind of the sequential ways of looking at that thought, and then afterwards I'm at a place where I'm like, this is the truth, this is the absolute truth, and then slowly it starts to permeate into my consciousness, my day-to-day consciousness, and those things are meant to ties into this. I mean, this death and dying Bardo teachings is something that I think many people can, like dying is something I'm going to do later, that type of thing, so like it's quite esoteric and it's quite eccentric, and it's like nothing Western people have ever kind of heard or like been presented with. So it's like a lot of people always say like it's too much, but for me the whole thing with Dharma practice is to prepare for dying. I'm not meditating to feel good and to feel blissful and to become a better person, that type of there's no such thing as becoming a better person, because ultimately everything is perfect. It's just about sinking into that awareness, right? But like this contemplation will, for me, it is, I have no fear of death. You know, I'm like, most days I'm like, whenever, like I'm ready anytime. Like I don't want to be caught off guard. Like obviously I think there's the best way is to kind of be prepared, you know, whether it's with sickness or whether it's like you kind of feel like you're getting old and you maybe your awareness is at a state where you kind of like, I feel like I'm going to die in 3 weeks from now, you know, so I just want to sit and like be ready for it and kind of just consciously, like for me the best would be to consciously go into the death process, like be sitting in meditation and like almost know as the minutes come, it's like I want to be telling whoever is with me, like I'm going to die in 2 minutes, you know, like type of thing. And like prep, like what you also said, prep people around me. Like I want perfect conditions, you know, that's the ultimate, but we don't have control over that, hopefully. And what you also said with that alive consciousness, hopefully the karma, the positive karma that I generate and that we generate with our practice will put us in a fortunate position, you know, that we have fortunate circumstances for dying, to be prepared, to be ready, to be at peace, and to be not just ready, welcoming, you know, because of this opportunity that we're talking about
Exactly, and not
in these
afraid.
borders.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Now, I agree with what you're saying, and I think it's really, I think contemplating is one of the biggest things that I do. I contemplate these teachings a lot,
yeah,
you know, because I want them to be so creative within me, and they plop. And now I'm teaching them totally differently to how I taught them, you know, many years ago, because many years ago I followed it, but now I'm not following that. I'm really feeling it in my bones. That's what I'm trying to say to you. So I
yeah,
think what
yeah.
you're saying is very important. Just mute yourself, Liam, so we don't have problems with the video. But what I want to say to all of you is just a few things about, and then we could do some meditation. Just a few things about this Bardo of becoming, because it really, really, really is a very interesting Bardo, because when you arrive in it, your mental body comes from the elements being reversed. That's what I was telling you last time. So when the elements get reversed, you form a mental body, okay? And just to tell you all that at that point, at the beginning of the Bardo of becoming, comes back all your instincts and your negative emotions, unfortunately. So what was taken away for the two afterlife bardos comes back in the bardo of becoming. And they make that very, very clear. In fact, in this is such a lovely book. I think you should all get it. I only got this recently. The Six Bardos of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's really a very, very interesting book by Khenchen Palden Sherab Rinpoche and his brother Khenpo Tsewang Dongyo Rinpoche, and they're very modern, and they taught, you know, a lot in America and everything, and they wrote about the six bardos and the peaceful and wrathful deities, and it's really a very good thing. Now, in this book, he says, when you come to the third bardo, Bardo voyagers are restless and their uncomfortable feelings gradually increase. This continues for about 2 weeks. When they talk about a day or a week in the Bardo, it can be a different amount of time, because all of them say, you know, the average time is 49 days, 7 weeks. That's why you do a dark retreat, which I'm going to question Damayeshi on next week when he comes. But it's really important to understand that for an ordinary person, when they form their mental body in the third bardo, he says, the speed and uncontrollable chaos can be overwhelming. Fear and anxiety may begin to dominate their mood. There are no gross elements present at this stage, but the bardo consciousness, that's your going into that bardo, is developing in relation to its karmic winds. Now, we all have karmic winds in our body right now. And when we're in the third bardo, it develops according to the karmic winds of the four elements, earth, water, fire, and air. These four winds interact with our habit patterns and emotional instability and can give rise to further visions that could be frightening. When the earth wind becomes unbalanced, it causes you to feel like there are landslides and earthquakes. Now remember, the mental body is 9 times more intelligent than you are in your physical body because it's free. So they really are aware of everything that's happening. So when the earth wind becomes unbalanced, you feel like there's a landslide and an earthquake. As the water wind is affected, you get stormy visions of heavy rain and crashing waves, as if there was a hurricane. And this makes your consciousness more unsteady. When the fire wind is influenced, you see houses, buildings, and whole cities burning and great fires spreading through mountain forests. When the wind of air is affected, you feel intense pressure and hear howling and rumbling as if a tornado is approaching. But then they go on to say, if you were a kind-hearted, loving person, he says, a guide often appears to assist you through this phase. What is very important, okay, I'm not going into all his details, but I'm going to do a couple of other points. But what is very important here is that what you are doing is, if you are trained, you are not going to get blown about and everything. If you sit and you say, I know that I'm in a mental body, I'm aware that I'm in a mental body, and I'm fully aware that all these things around me are temporary, transient, and I will not be afraid of them. I will sit very quietly and stably and really find my true nature. Now, if you have been doing Chenrezi a lot and you really know the song to go to Amitabha's Pure Land, if you sat and you stabilized your mind and you actually started singing, if you sang that, as soon as you were there, 2 minutes, you'd be out of that. If you are able to do Guru Rinpoche's 7-line prayer, or Ahung Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Hung, if you sit and calm yourself and do Guru Rinpoche's mantra, Guru Rinpoche's 7-line prayer, the prayer to take you to Devat Chen, I will do many, many things, because every single morning I do a prayer to be reborn in my own mind in the copper-colored mountain, which is Guru Rinpoche's environment, the lotus environment, that really is, when you get born there, you have to work. Boy, you have to work very, very hard, because you're going to go and serve and everything. So every morning I do this long prayer, for the rebirth. So when you are in the bardo of becoming, okay, what can happen is your body can crack up. And then well, it doesn't matter if one of those landslides hit me. I can just absolutely and totally put myself together, because I'm in a mental body. You do not get afraid. But in the beginning of the bardo of becoming, a lot of people who are attached to their families go back. Some of them even try and enter their old bodies. And a lot of them go back, and the family can't see them, and they're very frustrated. Like, I remember one guy that I was counseling, whose wife, he went on a motorbike and had a car and had an accident on the motorbike and died. And I went to him in my sleep state. The wife had suffered from depression, and she had these 2 little babies. And I just remember going in my dream, and he said, Melanie, I can't have died. I can't have died. I can't have died. Because when I woke up, I was exhausted. And I said, you have died, but now I want you to calm down, because you will be able to see that whatever happens with your wife, she will manage. You've given what you need. You need to let go and go on your journey. It's really important when you're in that third Bardo of becoming that you do not attach yourself to anything. Now, in the first period of the Bardo of becoming, a lot of people go back, they go to their funeral. If their funeral's a bit later, they go to their funeral, they go and try and find out what, if people are talking about them, that's the worst thing you can do for a deceased person that doesn't know where they're going. Me, I won't hear whatever anybody says. It doesn't really matter to me. But the thing is, if you can be very disruptive. If somebody's really crying for you, even for an animal, someone was telling me today, that they cry for their animal. The animal feels obliged to go back. So it's very important when you're crying to say to the person, I'm crying for me, but you need to go on your journey. Don't be disturbed by my tears when you are letting, because we need to do everything to make them aware and give them the space to go on their particular journey. And what is important is that in the beginning of the Bardo of becoming, many beings are very involved still with their old lives and all the people they've left behind and their children and so on and so forth. But when halfway of that Bardo happens, then they start being interested in where they're going, and they start, because the mental body resembles your old physical body in the beginning of the Bardo of becoming. But somewhere about halfway through that Bardo of becoming, now you are getting interested in the new body that you're going to go into and in the new parents. And this is where the teaching is so amazing for this, because it tells you, do not be attracted to the realms of samsara. And if you know that you're going to have a human birth because you feel it if you are aware in your impelling consciousness, remember you are 9 times clearer. And if you are being impelled into consciousness, then you also want to be sure, because the lights of the lower realms shine. And sometimes for people that is very attractive. And that's why in the Bardo teachings it says, don't be attracted to the lights of samsara. Rather sit in your meditation, call to Guru Rinpoche, call to whoever, whichever being, Chenrezi, whoever you really feel really strongly for, so that you are not attracted to that. And then they have this whole teaching on closing the womb. Because when you are afraid, when all those winds are upside down, it's very easy for your impelling consciousness to just take you into a womb. But in the Bardo teachings, Padmasambhava says, close the womb, or see the parents who are making love as the deity. See them as Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal. As you could see them as Jesus and Mary, you could see them as anything you like, but see them in a really spiritual way, so you don't just go in. And then not only that, not only should you not be attracted, but also, and next week you can really ask a lot of these questions, when you are going to be born in the human realm, okay, there are 4 continents that you will see, 4 continents. It's like the whole human realm is divided into 4 continents. Okay. Now, only in one of those continents is the Dharma being taught, if that's what you really want. So it's very important not to just go crushing into a womb because you're scared. And then you wake up and there are your parents with all the karmic imprints and the whole story all over again. You never got off the wheel of life. You need to block that entrance by your awareness, by sitting and being able to meditate on the unreality of all the experiences around you and choosing the best possible rebirth. Because if I have to come back to birth, I ain't going through one of the earthly religions. That is for sure. Then I must be born into a Tibetan or a Buddhist family, which Taisito asked me, don't you want to be born? He said, don't you want to be born into a Tibetan family and come and study for 14 years the Dharma? I said, no, I'm done with studying. I said, I don't want to do that, but I do want to be very sure that if I have to come back for rebirth, if I've got too much karma or whatever, and my impelling consciousness is taking me, then I want to be sure that I come into rebirth so that I can have the Dharma teachings very, very, very soon at 1 or 2 years old. You know, I don't want to wait for many years and muck my way around and everything. So I'm just telling you a few of my preferences, but there are all these instructions. You can go into any of these books. They all give you the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Close the womb, close the womb, close the womb. Don't be in a rush to run from the Bardo of becoming because you are afraid. Sit. Let's do it now. Let's say you were in the Bardo of becoming. Let's do the meditation now. Okay. So I'm going to give you an ugly one. Remember, if you have done wonderful deeds for people and you've been really a caring person and you've looked after the animals of the world and you've had a really worthwhile, beneficial, you will not see negative things in your mental body. You will see beautiful things. But you also want to have a sharp awareness. So let's say you're in a mental body. You do remember some of these teachings. You could say, oh, yeah, Melanie told us about this. I remember this. I remember that. But you can suddenly say, wow, I'm in a mental body. And sit yourself down. And let's say you've got a lot of karmic garbage around you in your mental body. Let's say there's an earthquake down the road, or there are heavy winds or storms, and you're sitting there, and suddenly you remember, oh my goodness, I am able to get to a pure land of my mind. If you are able to, for example, get to Devat Chen, then you are able to be born in a lotus, and you can fix all your karma during that time in this beautiful pure land. You can call it a Garden of Eden, where there's medicines and food and growth and nature and everything beautiful. So as you sit, you can start to sing the Devat Chen song if you know it, like I know it off by heart. And if you know it, you could start to sing it. But first, oh, I'm in the Bardo. I know this is the Bardo of becoming. And what do I want to become? I want to serve. I want to help. I want to cure. I want to uplift beings. I want to look after the planet. I want to not take things for granted. Just be in your true nature and actually call to your true nature. I'm just giving you ideas. Oh, primordial consciousness, I've waited so long for this moment. Let me see my pure essence. And you breathing in and out in your mental body, and you sitting quietly. And all the wombs that you might be able to see, where you might be able to be born, you say, I remember, I'm closing the womb. I'm not rushing into human birth. The more I am in touch with my beautiful consciousness, the more choice I have. Where do I want to go from here? I'm not afraid of the landslide. I'm not afraid of the waterfall. I'm not afraid of anything. I know it's all just created forms. Nothing is real. Nothing is stable. I feel like I'm being blown about by the winds of everything. But now I know there's a stable part of me, and I'm sitting in that stability. And Guru Rinpoche, Amitabha, the Lotus family, if that's what you like, Chen Rezi, also part of the Lotus family, come with your compassion. Come and fetch me in my mind and take me to a pure land where I'll be able to learn and grow and really benefit beings. And just by sitting there in that Bardo, even though many things are going around you, you will have victory for absolute sure. It is written by Padmasambhava. He goes, O beings of light, remember that you are beings of light. The only reason you've gone into embodiment and gone along thinking you were this one and this was sad and that was sad, was because you did not know who you were. If you know who you are absolutely pure. You have never been separated from your beautiful essence, your beautiful primordial consciousness. Just feel yourself totally in touch with it. Breathe into the blue sky. Bring it into your being. And no hurry. I know that my whole life that I've just lived was temporary, transient, like one grain of sand in the sand pit. There's no rush to be in another embodiment. I am going to liberate and be able to go through and purify myself and give the service that I've always wanted to give. And that's what you do when you're in the Bardo of becoming. Even if you see chaos, the chaos is just your habitual momentums, nothing else. And do not escape into a womb. And ask for the guidance while you're there. Ask the Dakinis, come and get me. Come and be with me. Take me to where I can go so that I can be totally enlightened. No rush into any womb. Remember, if you go into another womb, it's the two bindus that go into place and you squashed in the middle in the womb of your mother. Be sure that you're going into a place where you can really benefit things. And if you really have a lot of negative karma, you could still do that as long as you haven't killed anybody, as long as you haven't murdered anybody. You know, even if you've done some nasty things to people, you could actually say in that Bardo, I am so sorry. I ask for forgiveness. I want to change. I want to really be able to have a beautiful rebirth or a beautiful entry into the Pure Lands. And then you can sing that song. And Amitabha has promised that all beings who are absolutely aware, that haven't committed things like murders, you can't get there if you have, but if you haven't done things like that, you've just done the few odd things that all of us have done, you really, really, really can come to Devachen because of his promise. And Devachen is the land of bliss, where you're born in a lotus and you're able to pay your karma and learn and study and grow and everything else. So you can go to a pure land, any of the pure lands. Just remember, if you are pushed around in the bardo of becoming, it is simply your habitual momentum, and you can go beyond that. It's not solid, it's not you, it's just things that you've been through. You can go beyond it for absolute sure. So let's dedicate, particularly tonight, and then I'll answer any questions. And also next week, when we have Lamiyeshi coming, we'll definitely, you ask your Bardo questions. He's really an expert because of his 3 dark retreats or 2 dark retreats of 49 days, pitch dark. He really is able to do a lot, okay, and teach us a lot, and I'll keep him engaged all the time. But tonight, because we are doing the Bardo teaching, let's dedicate, if there's any merit, to all those who've died in these horrific wars, in protests, in bombs, in aeroplane crashes, in the terrible wars all over in Europe, in the Middle East, everywhere. We really say to all those beings from this prayer, it is not a catastrophe if you've lost your life. You are able, if you're able to see that everything is illusory and everything is temporary and transient, you can find your way to the light in a beautiful new journey. So through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience, may all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. On the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. Sonam diye tamche zipane topne nepe tranam pamshene jeganachi balaptropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho. Get that now, hang on. Don't know how they're doing this now. Don't know how to stop it. How do you stop it? Anyone, any ideas how I can stop this? It hasn't got that setting anymore. I don't know how to stop it. It's changed.
Maybe, Melanie, when you go to meeting on the top.
Meeting. I don't know how to stop this transfusion.
More, Mel, if you go to more, does it give you an option?
I'm looking at it. Just let me see. Recall. Maybe when you press. Oh, okay.